Gentlemen, both you in the audience and the home viewing audience, welcome to the February 24th meeting of the Burnsville Planning Commission. First order of business is to call the meeting to order. Second item is adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda, Mr. Slaney?
None from staff.
Any suggested changes from commissioners? None. Hearing none, I will take a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Commissioner Thomas, seconded by Commissioner Singh. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The agenda is adopted. Second order of business is approval of the minutes of the February 10th meeting of the Planning Commission. Any changes from staff?
None from staff.
Any changes from commissioners? Hearing none, I'd like to hear a motion, please.
I so move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the minutes from the February 10th meeting are adopted. Third item on the agenda is a public hearing of an application for NSP for preliminary and final plat of a 3-lot subdivision to be known as, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation here, but Wapatu Mazda Ranch, second edition, and variance to drainage and utility easement requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. This is a public hearing for the plat application. I'd like to point out there are no building or site improvements as part of this request. We are simply dealing with the plat and the subsequent easement variance. We are dealing with the NSP, the Northern States Power Excel property. It is located on the northern part of town. You'll see right here 35W. It stretches from 35W across Burnsville to the Egan border. You'll see Cedar Avenue is right here, the Minnesota River across the top, and the railroad right-of-way across the bottom. We are applying for the plat and the variance. NSP is the property owner. The address we're using for this is 1400 Black Dog Road. That is the address for the power plant that's located on Black Dog Road. The subject site encompasses 1,400 acres. You can see on the map it is a significant piece of property. It does contain the plant located in this area as well as Black Dog Lake. Black Dog Road runs parallel to the river on the north side of the property. The site is zoned CD, which is Conservancy, and designated as Minnesota River Quadrant in the comprehensive plan. Sorry, skip page. There's quite a history with this application and Black Dog Road, etc. The city has been working with Xcel Energy since 2011 and even prior to that, work out agreements on getting the property platted, agreements on the road. There were also was also bridge reconstruction, which was reviewed by the Planning Commission at that time. Just a brief history. Black Dog Road floods nearly every summer, and that is, every spring, and that is thousands of dollars for continual maintenance of that road by the city. The agreement that was executed between the Xcel and the city in 2012 outlines a framework where the city would turn back at Black Dog Road to Xcel. There would be a one-time contribution by the city to make improvements to get the road back up to somewhat of a approved state or satisfied state. There's also dedication of easements, parkland, a number of other things coming into play. As I said, the total property is 1,400 acres. And let me jump to a different image. Here's an aerial photo. Again, 35W on the left, Cedar Avenue and the City of Eagan on the right. The plant is located right in here, Black Dog Lake, and you can see Black Dog Road running through there. There are just 2 parcels within this large site. Neither one of them have been platted. That was one of the main goals of the city, was to get a correct legal description and get the property platted. The Lot 1, which would represent 1,344 acres, will represent obviously almost of the entire site. It will represent the lake, much of the road, the power plant, and much of the green space and wildlife area that you see here south of the lake. Lot A is right in this area. It is directly west of the Lindale Gate Bridge, or the westerly bridge along Black Dog Road. That is intended, it will remain as an outlot, which simply means it's unbuildable. It's just over 5.2 acres in size. It does contain, or will contain, an easement for the city for trailhead purposes. There is a parking lot there. The city will continue to utilize that, and that will be the trailhead for anyone visiting or accessing the trail. That would be their starting point as they move east along Black Dog Road, which would eventually be NSP property once that turnback occurs. The other parcel, Outlot B, which you'll see right in this area, is 44 acres in size. It contains a large easement by the Lower Minnesota Watershed District for dredge spoils when dredging occurs along the Minnesota River. This will also contain an easement for the trail as it moves east along Black Dog Road. The plat also provides right-of-way that doesn't exist right now, dedicated right-of-way adjacent to Outlot A for Black Dog Road, and along the west side of the property for Interstate 35W. That represents just under 15 acres of right-of-way that MnDOT does not currently have. So there are a number of benefits with this plat. Obviously, it's taken quite a while to work through all these issues with the property owner, as well as the city and all the other entities involved. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has stakes in the property as well through easements they have with the property owner. There will be a 50-foot easement contained within the plat. This will run along the south end of the property, stretching from this area along the railroad right-of-way all the way to the end of the property, or the end of the Burnsville city limits. This will be a utility and drainage easement. This is larger than normal. Typically, the largest easement we would get with the plat would be 10 feet deep. This is 50 feet to accommodate some of the utility work that is and will continue to happen in that area. That was a large benefit for the city that was worked through on behalf of the property owner. In lieu of the stormwater fees being paid, that larger than normal easement was provided. There were also benefits to the city as far as parkland goes. There will be a continuation of a 1,400 acre 1,400 acre wildlife refuge. That is U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the city for the next 50 years. That is at no additional cost. And the property owner will be granting the city a 2-acre easement for park purposes. That is located on Outlot A, just west of the Lindale Gate Bridge. These are all part of agreements that had been worked out previously by the city and the property owner. These get to the stormwater fees and the park dedication fees. Lastly, the applicant has requested a variance. Typically, we receive a 5-foot drainage and utility easement along side property lines, a 10-foot drainage and utility easement along front and rear property lines. Because of the uniqueness and the shape of the lot, what it is adjacent to with the Minnesota River, the railway right-of-way, 35W on the west and Cedar Avenue on the east, the applicant has requested a variance to that, which basically means the property owner could not put to a reasonable manner the property if the city were to inflict the ordinance or put forth the ordinance criteria as it's laid out. Again, we're not looking at economic considerations, but we are looking at the reasonableness of the request and the practical difficulty in conjunction with the request. In this situation, it is not the shape, the location, the size of the property is not a reflection of the property owner's actions. It's simply the location. This is certainly a unique lot. The fact that it is adjacent to existing right-of-ways and the Minnesota River to the north, it's reasonable and practical. The city would not pursue the standard easements in place. Also taking in account the larger than normal easement on the south side of the property, staff is more than comfortable foregoing the easement, but it is something we wanted to call out as part of the report. It is part of the request and would be recorded as such. As you can imagine, most of the subject property is in the floodplain of the Minnesota River. This gets to much of the discussion of Black Dog Road and the continuation of the flooding. There are no, as I said, there are no improvements proposed at this time. Therefore, there are no shoreland district requirements being put in place. If at any time site improvements or buildings or grading or anything occurs where we're dealing with in excess of 1,000 cubic yards, it would be brought back possibly to the Planning Commission or at a minimum to staff to make sure we're consistent with the shoreland and the floodplain district. As I indicated, the stormwater and the park dedication fees have been satisfied in the 2012 agreement. There are base mapping fees due with the plat, and again, should future improvements take place out there, the city would have the ability to review park dedication at that time. But again, because of the floodplain and many of the conservancy easements out there, staff is not looking at significant development in this area, which is again why it is zoned conservancy and reflected that way on the zoning map. Again, commissioners, the applicant is requesting preliminary and final plat. The plat satisfies the requirements except for the easement criteria that I discussed before. When we're reviewing that, we're obviously looking for the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to the council and so forth. The easement proposed, it is still in harmony with the general purposes of the zoning ordinance and the subdivision. The practical difficulty of this lot is its location in relationship to the Minnesota River and its unique size. The application is consistent with the comprehensive plan and comprehensive plan, and therefore staff is supportive of the variance request. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, there are no conditions. Staff is recommending approval as presented. We do have a representative from Excel here if there are questions. Otherwise, Mr. Hillgardner and I are here, and we can answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from commissioners while Mr. Slaney is at the podium?
No questions, Mr. Chair. This is a very complicated project. Reading the background information, it was very difficult to grasp what has gone on over the years at NSP. I think, however, that the application before us, I can see the amount of work done between the city and the applicant. And I think I commended the applicant in working with the city, and I commend the city because there was a give and take here. We had to give and take for easements and fees and those kinds of things. So I appreciate the work that both sides have done on this.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. And I agree with my fellow commissioner. I mean, it's very complicated, which leads to my questions. I'm not fully informed about what's gone on behind the scenes, so these might be easily answered. But as I look at it, my first thought is that we make sure that we provide the proper easements to protect our residents in the city. And I wonder if there's any background on Black Dog Lake itself. I mean, that's not contained within an easement, but we do have public drainage going there.
Correct. That is something I've tried to connect with our engineering department on as far as the details of that. Should there be a drainage easement over Black Dog Lake? Brian, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that, but we'll have an answer, and we can get back to the commission on that.
Okay. Again, another item that you probably have agreements with NSP on is a potential for a possible bike corridor along the south side of the river.
Correct.
Is that part of the agreements?
That is part of the agreement. Initially, we had hoped that all of these moving targets would come together at the same time. Unfortunately, we're on different time frames. The city has grant money, and we're working with the property owner to pursue the ped trail and the bike trail along Black Dog Road. So that is certainly something that's in the works, and we are moving forward on it. We have the ability to pursue that once this plat is done. There's also improvements that would be part of Black Dog Road that would take care of some of those issues, as well as the grant money that's available to further extend or enhance that trail, so it's more than just using Black Dog Road. That should be, I apologize, I don't know the final dates, but we should be seeing that later this summer.
Well, and I see that Black Dog Road has got an easement over it in favor of the city to be vacated, and I would hope that that vacation would be contingent upon, some of those trail things maybe worked out. I don't know. But
it is, Mr. Commissioner, to your point, it's contingent on a number of things before we vacate that.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Singh?
Chris, can you just explain a little bit more for me? What impact will this have on Black Dog Road? We know of the flooding that happens, and after the floods are gone, it's in such condition that, calls for a lot of work to get it back in good condition. Can you explain what the impact will be?
Absolutely. I'm trying to find a good image maybe I'll use this one. It's just to put everything in perspective. Long-term goal would be that Black Dog Road would be closed for public vehicle access from this, which is the Lindale or the West Bridge, the entire stretch until you get over towards Cedar Avenue. There will be a stretch between the interstate and this bridge that is still public operated road. This is where the trailhead will be, parking lot for the trail, and this is where the trail starts. So this small section would be city right-of-way. Along the road, as we know it today, that will be strictly pedestrian bicycle access. Again, it would not be public vehicle access. It will be a maintained road because that is the connection Xcel Energy needs to reach the power plant. So although the road will still continue and there will be some traffic on it, it will be limited to Xcel traffic rather than the general public accessing it by vehicles. Brian, do you know any more on the trail or the timing, any of those items?
Yeah, I believe the last that I looked at with, and again, I apologize too, but the Public Works Director has been working pretty hard, as well as the Community Development Director on this. But I believe the trail is to move forward this spring in approximately May. I think the answer with maintenance, being that this is going to become an easement, would go back to becoming NSP's maintenance unless there's agreements or joint power items worked out at that time. Those final items have not been worked out. Again, we're kind of dealing with the plat ahead of the trail. But when the trail does come along, those items will be discussed and brought forward at that time.
Thank you, Brian. That was my next question about the maintenance. So thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Chris, I have a couple more questions while you're at the board or at the podium. On the road itself, does the plat vacate the easement, or does the easement remain?
The easement remains.
Okay, so we still have an easement on the road. Okay, then I'm concerned, if I understand it correctly, the city's giving $150,000 to NSP as part of taking over, or excuse me, to Xcel as part of taking over maintenance of the road.
Correct.
It's a little bit confusing to me because wouldn't they be paying for any improvements to the road since they're the only property owner adjacent to the road?
It is. You're correct. That was negotiations between the city and the property owner that occurred a couple years ago. I wasn't privy to all of that, but it was essentially it was a compromise. The city benefits from the annual yearly maintenance of it. Xcel accepts the maintenance from that point running forward. Staff or the council felt a one-time contribution would be maybe not sufficient, but one would be suitable.
So this was due to a previous agreement?
Correct.
Okay, and then the park dedication, I think if I have it right, you've got 1.6 acres for park dedication here?
We have 1.6 acres specifically within Outlot A, and that is for the parking lot and the trailhead. There is, I should say, I believe 1,400 acres that is between the property owner and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. The city is involved in that a little bit, but that is existing green space and wildlife refuge in this area that will continue. I believe the agreement says another 50 years.
Okay, and then if that ever gets developed, additional park dedication fees would be due at that time?
Correct.
Okay. All right, I think that's all the questions I had. This is a public hearing. Anybody, I now open the public hearing. Do we have anybody from the audience that would wish to speak at this time?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Russ Hammond with Excel is here. I'm sure you can fill in some of those blanks and clarify a few things. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Ross Hammond, Ross Hammond, 2760 West River Parkway, Minneapolis, 55406. I'm representing Excel. I've been working. I'm working at the plant currently, and working with the city on the trail, also on the remediation of the coal yard. And perhaps I can answer a few of the questions. The $150,000 payment was agreed to in the 2012 development agreement, and it was an agreement between the city and at Excel to rebuild the Lyndale Bridge, which the trail will use. The trail will go across part of the Lyndale Bridge, which was at that time in very bad condition. There are also going to be repairs to this Cedar Bridge, which is on the other end. I guess if you can see, it's a little above where it says R1 on the map. The trail will also go across that bridge. The total cost of rebuilding the road, we're trying to get the road, which will now become a private driveway for the plant officially. The original plan was to just do an overlay, and then the engineering, Steve Albrecht had an engineering study done, and he said that would not be a prudent move. So the road is going to cost about $850,000. NSP or Excel, NSP Minnesota will pay $700,000 of that, and the city will pay $150,000 as part of this 2012 development agreement. So it's I too would like to commend the city and the staff for really working very well on this project. I think it's a real win-win for Burnsville and for the citizens to have this greenway right along the river. It's very nice area. I'm sure a few people will be upset there isn't a road anymore, but it's going to be a very nice space for people to walk and use bicycles. A lot of bird watchers will be down there. It's actually a very beautiful area, quite a beautiful area. Just in terms of the trail, we will be rebuilding the road. Steve said as soon as whatever happens with flooding this year, and then he wants to wait till the ground dries out, and then he is going to do they're taking bids on rebuilding the road to the west of the plant, and then early next year the city's planning to build the trail west from the plant, about the west half, build the trail west from the plant all the way, and build the park and everything on the west side. Now next, in 2015, we will be remediating the area along east of the plant, which now has coal. I think the term the people at the Pollution Control Agency use is coal combustion residue, which is a mixture of coal and ash that was buried in the 1950s and 1960s. We have to take all that out of there and make the area clean. Then that area, in early 2016, the trail will be built to the east. So it'll be completed, dedicated sometime probably June of 2016. And then the easement, to answer your question, Mr. Commissioner, before, Steve would like to keep the easement in place. The trail is essentially going to be on the existing Black Dog Road easement. Excel is going to grant some additional area on either side as required to meet the DOT requirements for a trail. But then the easement will be vacated the road easement will be vacated in 2017, and at that time, Excel will grant a permanent trail easement for the entire trail and park.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions from commissioners for Mr. Hammond? Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Anybody else would like to come up and speak now? Having seen none, the public hearing is now closed. Any additional comments from commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I think it's a win-win for Excel and for the city. And I intend to support the application.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I, too, would like to commend staff and Excel and all the people involved in these projects over the last number of years now. I don't know how many, but I know there was a successful project approved last spring. So it's good to see all this going forward and really turning the river there into a potential amenity for the city while still being used by Excel for their business purposes. All right. Shall we? Can I hear a motion?
Mr. Commissioner, or Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the NSP Company application for preliminary and final plat of a 3-lot subdivision to be known as Wapatu Maza Ranch Second Edition and variance to drainage and utility easement requirements as presented.
Second that.
A second. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passes 3-0. And this will go on to the City Council
The council is going to review this at their meeting next week, March 4th.
on March 4th. Okay. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing also for an application for LMA Partners LLP for an ordinance amendment to Title 10, Chapters 4, 23, 24, and 26 to allow sports performance training centers as a conditional use in the I-1 zoning district.
Commissioners, you generally have two issues that were presented as part of this study. The first is the introduction of a sports training facility within an I-1 zoning district. The second, as part of the analysis that we did, we are also going to give the Planning Commission some homework that they can take to a future meeting in re-examining all the conditional uses that we already have in the industrial districts. The request that we have right now is stimulated by LMA Partners, owner of a property within the I-1 district. The I-1 district is centrally located within the city. It is our light industrial district. A number of months ago, it was discovered that we have a sports performance training facility located within this district. It was identified by the signage, and we discovered that it is not a permitted or conditional use within the I-1 district. Currently, we do allow for sports training facilities within our I-3 zoning district, but it's not allowed in the I-1. As part of this, tonight you'll be examining a potential zoning ordinance amendment. And in looking at introducing this use within the district, we've prepared a February 5th planning study that I'll just briefly go over with you. When we look at expanding these uses, we look at the purpose and intent of the zoning districts. Frequently, we look at, when we introduce an industrial district, what's the impact on the surrounding land uses as far as noise, traffic, odors. Likewise, when we have an industrial district, we look at the introduction of a lesser intense use and the impact it has on the intent and purpose of our industrial district. Inherent in our industrial district are industrial operations. There are truck traffic, it's heavy traffic, it's noise, odors, general operations associated with assembly and manufacturing. And as a result, the introduction of a less intense use can frequently dilute that district and even cause problems for the operations that occur. In the comprehensive plan, the city looked at the I-1 district and saw this as one of our older industrial districts and made suggestions as to how can we continue to keep this a vital commercial economic development tool or instrument within the city. And one of the suggestions was examining those those uses that may be appropriate within it to provide a broader field that property owners can solicit to fill in vacant areas. The city has set up a hierarchy of 5 districts. Those districts grow with intensity, I-1 being our least intense district. The purpose of the I-1 district is to provide the establishment of warehousing and light industrial development and large volume truck-oriented users. When we look at that, we raise the question as to, does the sports training facility fit within the context of that general purpose? If you examine your I-1 district, we have a very broad range of current commercial uses. I'm going to give you this example. We allow the B1, B2, and B3 conditional uses to roll into the I-1 and other in I-1 and I-2 district. One of the assignments that we're going to discuss a little later is, are all of these uses appropriate within that industrial environment? When we look at the criteria for evaluating it, we have the general provisions established in Section 10.10.5, which are very broad and generalized determinations that you have to make in approving a conditional use permit. However, these are not always specific to the individual uses, and when we look at that, we are going to make some suggestions as to additional performance standards to ensure that the use can go into the building and compatibly coexist with our industrial uses. Specific to sports training facilities, what we've discovered is a lot of other communities have sports training facilities within their industrial parks, specifically their industrial warehousing areas. A few examples is that right here in Burnsville, we approve pitch-to-pitch. We also have Midwest Volleyball. Other communities, such as City of Champlin, has Velocity Sports, and Rallia Sports is in Maple Grove. All of them are located in industrial areas. The one thing that you frequently don't see, though, is on the weekends, if they run tournament play, just what the parking implications can be to those industrial areas. In looking at this type of use, these uses benefit from the warehouse type environment, high roofs, a lot of floor space, open activity areas to run program or to run their sports training. In that respect, we feel that they can compatibly coexist. However, we do have a number of issues that we want to raise to you, and we've identified them as part of the zoning rules. When you look at the ordinance that's being proposed, we're proposing to include amendment to our definition section right here, which would stipulate that this would be appointment only for individual or groups, and it would also be open to sports associations as well as schools and athletic organizations. When we look at the requirements, we're talking about amending Title 10, Chapter 23, which are the special performance standards for all industrial districts, and establishing specific rules for sports performance requirements. The biggest issue we have with commercial uses is hours of operation and traffic generation and bringing customers who are not necessarily familiar with that industrial environment. In that respect, we stipulate that if we allow this to go in, all off-street parking and loading shall be provided in accordance with our rules for sports training facilities. We have provision B for special events that must be accommodated with off-street parking either on the site or through a joint parking arrangement. If you recall pitch-to-pitch, they needed to go even beyond their property. That has to be pre-planned and pre-established. All signage must meet our Chapter 30 rules for industrial uses. Frequently, we get these businesses that come into industrial and then they're not high visibility uses, and so they try to compensate with additional signage. In this respect, if you choose to enter into an industrial park, you're treated like all the other industries. The sports training facility is located in a multi-tenant building. We want to make sure that it's properly parked, does not interfere with pedestrian or loading or truck movement on site, and that if the building inspector must make a determination that the building can't handle the change of occupancy. Frequently, we have issues with warehouse space being converted to commercial or assembly space, and it raises issues as far as fire protection, exiting, even needed plumbing facilities. Each one of these things have to be addressed. One of the issues that we face specifically in the I-1 district is that most of these areas have been parked based on a manufacturing or warehousing land use. When we have the introduction of a commercial use, that can change dramatically. And one of the other things that was identified in the industrial study that was done in conjunction with the comprehensive plan is that most of these sites are designed for these uses and have struggled to meet their green space requirements. So the expansion for parking will result in further decrease in the green space. So it's up to the applicant to demonstrate that they can meet these conditions when they're coming into these uses. The final sections of the ordinance are the introduction of the use within the I-1 district and the I-3 district, and this will roll over into the I-2 district. And then just a general adoption. That is the ordinance in front of you is specific to the property that's requesting it. Additionally, you should receive on your dais tonight that you will have, we were also examined, we raised the question, do all these conditional uses that roll over from B1, B2, and B3 into industrial, are they appropriate? That is your homework assignment, is we're giving you that tonight, and we've made some suggestions as far as changes. Quite frankly, in talking with Jenny and Chris, if we don't have a number of these uses already in the industrial district, we're, as far as assembly or commercial uses, we're strongly recommending that they be removed as conditional uses, just from the standpoint that I've already had experience in another one of my communities where a commercial business went retail where it was previously wholesale, and the success of that business caused problems as far as on-site parking for the multi-tenant building, but also congested the streets to the point we had problems with our other industries on other sites. The end result was the city actually had to prosecute, and they had to relocate. They relocated out of New Hope into Brooklyn Park, and problems did not go away, but they just moved. So Brooklyn Park faced the same issue. And so we are very cautious about protecting the integrity of the industrial park. In this case, with sports training facilities, staff feels comfortable in recommending approval of the amendment with the conditions that have been outlined. If there's any questions, I'll try to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Brixius. Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Brixius, whenever we get an application similar to this one, certain things come up. And one, my first concern is this business has been operating illegally. Am I right?
That's correct.
Has there been complaints from the neighboring businesses? What is it? There is a negative impact on the neighboring businesses?
Chris, have we received any complaints?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, not that staff's aware of. I don't know if concerns have gone to the property owner, but it's not something that staff's receiving complaints on.
What about parking? I mean,
The conditional use, right now we're just looking at it from a zoning standpoint as far as introducing the use. A conditional use permit will have to be pursued by this business, and they will have to demonstrate how the parking and the parking configuration will work for their business. be quite frank, in visiting the site, I looked at it and I thought that this is a hard site to find and get to, so I understand why there's signage needs are. But it appears that all the loading and truck movement is on the back of the building while and segregated from the parking in front. So while it will be their responsibilities to demonstrate that they can meet these requirements, it appears that the site might be able to accommodate it.
So right now, what is before us is an application to amend Title 10.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just maybe a little bit of clarity here, because I see the recommendation in the report, but you're also stating that we have some homework here to do. Are we actually going to be moving on the recommendation, or which part of it are you asking that we take offline and come back?
We are asking that you move ahead on this application and address sports training facilities within our industrial district. We believe that they can fit and be compatible. However, in our examination or study on this, Pat, we identified all these other uses, and we're not prepared to tell you. We've, in the second report that you received tonight, we've made some suggestions. We question why a nursing home is appropriate within an industrial district at all. Nightclubs, liquor stores, these type of uses. And one of the future meetings, we would like to have that discussion, but we'd like to give you an opportunity to digest what we put in front of you tonight and look at our recommendations. Our intent is not to be so onerous that we limit our uses to be too restrictive, but we do have real concerns with some of these uses. A couple of things that you should be aware of is as part of assembly uses, if we allow an assembly use like a convention center or a theater, we may be open to the Religious Land Use and Institutional Persons Act, which would also automatically allow a church. One of the biggest issues I faced in older industrial areas is people look at these and they're affordable rents and they're large spaces. We can put a church in it. Charter schools, there's another popularity. In my other communities, there's a real concern about the potential loss of tax base due to the conversion of their industrial floor space over to nonprofit organizations. It's not to say that they're bad or good, but the second element of that is we're introducing non-industrial traffic or residents into an industrial environment, and then we have concerns about noise, odors, truck traffic, conflicts, those type of features. So we will ask you to look at those, each one of these things specifically at a later date, but we're asking you to act on the sports training center tonight.
Okay, so in future, there will be an opportunity to look at these other uses, and that might require additional amendments.
Yes, and that's what you have. This is your first introduction. We just wanted to give you that.
And just to point out, as Al pointed out, the report in your packet provided on Friday, that was dated February 5th, and then the discussion of the additional uses, that's dated the 19th, just to keep them separate.
Okay, thank you. Any additional, Commissioner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you expand a little bit on your definition of a sports performance training center? Things that catch my attention is a private establishment. That's pretty clear. But then you go on to list a number of other conditions to meet that definition.
Well, Commissioner Thomas, I have to say that this sports performance training center is really the current Burnsville one. The only changes that we're suggesting are the ones that are underlined.
Okay.
But what this is that, and when we looked at this, there's actually 3 different elements that have very similar uses. We have a definition of a health club, which has a lot of characteristics similar to this. We have the sports training facility, And if you look under the definitions or we also have this use gymnasium, which is not identified or specifically addressed. So we're suggesting that gymnasium be taken out, and we rely on these either health club or sports training facility. Sports training facilities are generally group training. You'll see it. What's being proposed from Southside is a training facility that offers weightlifting and other exercise in a group environment. Usually it's sports specific. In the case of Midwest Volleyball, it's volleyball. In the case of Rally up in Maple Grove, they are half volleyball, half soccer, and they also have a golf driving range. So they're specific elements. They give instruction. They give group and individual instruction, so it's batting cages, those type of features. And in identifying this, we attempted to utilize what we had in place, one that you used on pitch to pitch, and we're going to include Southside in this definition. Did I answer your question?
Yep. So currently in the city of Burnsville, how many facilities would fall under this definition?
3 that I know of.
Commissioners, 4, 3 in the I3 district, 1 that exists in the I1. We had additional ones, but due to turnover and things like that, tenants moving, we have lost a couple in the last few years, but half a dozen citywide.
And how would they be affected by the adoption of this ordinance?
They have already been approved. The uses in the I3 have been approved under this definition already. The existing use in the I1 district is a batting cage that the council looked at, I believe, in 2012 or early 2013, not pitch to pitch, but a different one. They are legal nonconforming because of that approval, but now the ability to also categorize them under sports performance just continues their land use clearance.
Generally, the thing you're doing is expanding the available buildings for this type of use. So there'll be more sites available for these type of uses. They are becoming more popular. The other element that I'd like to draw your attention to is that the I1 and the I3 have similar characteristics in that they're light industrial districts, office-oriented also. And so in that respect, the compatibility would be similar.
Yeah, and I applaud, opening up more opportunities for other businesses. I just want to make sure that our existing businesses aren't affected in a negative way, and you've answered that. Thank you.
Correct. To help me with the definition, does Soccer Blast fall into this?
You'll have to tell me what Soccer Blast is.
I'll ask Chris.
Yes.
Because he'll know.
Soccer Blast is not really what we had in mind with this use.
Right. I view that as kind of the edge here, but would it fall into this?
It has been approved in the I3. I believe it's under the stadium or the arena provision. I think it'd be tough to categorize it under this just because of some of the league play that's going on. There may be coaches there, but it's not really instruction. It's more scheduled play and so forth. So it is in the I3 district. It is a legal land use down there, but that's not what we had in mind necessarily with this.
Okay, yeah, and I'm just trying to get a flavor for a little bit of nuance here as to, I think the difference there is they do have many things that are just open to the general public.
Correct.
Okay, and so that's, I think, the key difference maybe for me. All right. Any additional questions for Mr. Brix's, Commissioners? All right, this is a public hearing. Anybody from the audience wish to come forward and speak on this topic? Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Maggie Linville Smith. My address is 2006 Sugarwood Drive, Long Lake, Minnesota. Mr. Chair and Commissioner members, first of all, I just wanted to introduce myself for those of you who I haven't met. I am the owner of the LMA Partners LLP partnership. I am also the president of Linville Properties. We are a long-term Burnsville business. We started our business in 1967 in the Riverwood Industrial Park when it was farms. We own 8 properties in that area, which house over 100 Burnsville businesses, representing over 250,000 square feet of property. Over the last 45 years, we have seen many businesses. We have seen Burnsville evolve. We have seen our businesses evolve. We do our best to have our businesses feel comfortable. We also, one of the things, though, of course, being in commercial real estate is buildings don't necessarily evolve. And one of the things that characterizes the Riverwood Industrial Park, it is the oldest industrial park in the city. I believe that's the case. Isn't that true, Chris?
I believe so.
And so at the time that that park was built and these buildings were built, the clear height and what was being asked of for businesses was much different than what industrial tenants are looking for today. The buildings in the Riverwood Industrial Park are typically 14-foot clear. Many industrial tenants now would like 18-foot clear, 24-foot clear. So what's being required of industrial businesses has changed quite a lot, although businesses, as is the nature, they evolve as well. So we have put forth this application. Mr. Singh, you made the comment that they were operating illegally. We sincerely apologize. We didn't realize that it wasn't a permitted use until the city brought it to our attention. But I am very appreciative of not only this effort, but as Chris and the consultant have talked about, the willingness to look at a lot of uses within the park, because we, as a landowner who represents a lot of buildings, we get a lot of inquiries. There's lots of entrepreneurs, there's lots of people who want to do business in Burnsville, and as businesses grow and the economy evolves, we would like to be able to contribute not only to the health of our business, but certainly to the health of Burnsville. So I wanted to be here tonight in the case that there were any questions for me. We represent a lot of property in that park, in the I-1 area. We've tried to work very closely with the city in responding to questions and providing information, and I wanted to be here personally to answer any questions that I could, and also to just thank Chris and the staff, and certainly the chair and the commissioner members for your time and consideration in reviewing our application.
Thank you. Any questions from commissioners for the applicant?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional comment from commissioners, any additional discussion? None?
We should close the public.
Oh, excuse me. Any further comment from the public? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Thank you. I'll go there again. Any additional comments or discussion from commissioners? All right. Hearing none, can I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I beg to move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the amendment to Title 10, Chapters 4, 23, 24, and 26, to allow sports performance training centers as a conditional use in the I-1 zoning district as outlined in the attached study and proposed amendment.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 3-0.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I can just go through some dates. for the applicant and anybody that might be following this, the proposed amendment is going to be reviewed by the Economic Development Commission on March 12th. They will review it, make a recommendation to the council as well as the Planning Commission did. Right now, the council is slated to see that April 8th. Subsequently, as Mr. Singh mentioned, we are going to work on the conditional use application for Southside Athletics to review them against this new application, and that'll be forthcoming very soon. Lastly, as Mr. Brixey has pointed out, we'd like to discuss some of these uses. Al mentioned some that will be being removed. I think there's some that are conditional uses now that we may suggest just be converted to permitted uses to open up that district a little more. Right now, we're hoping the Planning Commission can look at that at the end of April at a work session, not necessarily a public hearing at that time, but a work session to sort through some of this with staff and keep it moving forward.
One request, Chris, that you email if there were additional items provided tonight to the commissioners not present this evening.
I will do that.
Thank you. Okay, next item of business is a public hearing also. Application for Asheville Limp Family Limited Partnership for an interim use permit for soil remediation and soil stockpiling on Lot 8, Block 1, Burnsville Industrial Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, I believe you're familiar with these applications. We are now on to the next one. I apologize. I can't always keep track of how many we've dealt with, but this is another piece of property owned by the Asheville Family Partnership. This is along Ladybird Lane. You'll see to the right side of the page 35W. Much of their property and previous land uses are within this image, and as we move farther west towards County Road 5, there have been a number of other parcels included in this soil remediation interim use permit. What we're looking at is as these properties have come available, the Asselford family sees the vision that the city has. Obviously, the more land they have, the more flexibility they have with some of the dirt stockpiling, the quantity, the timing they have to work on some of these projects. So they have applied for the latest parcel is 2.8 acres in size, and it is both zoned and defined in the comprehensive plan as MRQ. There are no structures on the site. The site has previously been used for not landfill, soil stockpiling and some other uses. The neighboring property owner in the past has had agreements with previous owners for soil. You'll also notice there is an existing billboard, one of the billboards that was converted from the static to the electronic last year. That is currently held through an easement with Clear Channel Communications between Clear Channel and the operator. I can tell you the current easement expires in 2017. For any permanent development to occur on that site, the billboard would have to come down. It is not a situation where the property owner could have both the billboard and the structure. It's one or the other. With that, Commissioners, this is all addressed through the 2012 amendment the Planning Commission and the Council reviewed to allow property owners more flexibility when dealing with these poor soils, remediating the soils, possibly stockpiling them, stockpiling on site until property is developed. This is in the North Gateway design standard location, and again, to get to that end land use, to get buildings that are paying property taxes, that are aesthetically pleasing, that are bringing up tax values and employees to site, we need to, in the interim, deal with excavation and mining and the stockpiling. As I said, there has been previous work done on the site in storage. There are no significant trees. Unlike some of the other sites we've dealt with, oftentimes we do a tree calculation, figure out what the reforestation requirement is, and contain that until permanent development comes along. In this site, we're not dealing with that. There will be earth berms surrounding the property. As you'll see here, well, to put it in perspective, the neighboring building is located here, the interstate is here, the billboard and the easement sits up here, and we're looking at 10 to 12,000 cubic yards of correction, which would be in this area. This is their best anticipated location for a building at this time. So there would be berm and other erosion control in place. And Commissioner, staff is supportive of the request. There are a number of conditions attached to the interim use permit. These are very similar to the other properties we've addressed. Getting to the final design of the berm, the access points, the city engineer has the final say on that. The NPDES permit, as well as the note that we do want the berms on site for the aesthetics and the containment. They are not part of the final land use, and we'll get a separate landscape plan when these sites move forward. Commissioners, it is a public hearing. Due to scheduling conflict, the property owner is not here this evening, but I know Brian and I can field any questions you have on the project.
Thank you, Mr. Slamia. Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Singh?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, soil remediation is a good thing, right, Mr.
Yes, it is.
It's a good thing. And I think the Askelford family has made full use of this opportunity for soil remediation. I don't see anything that you should be concerned about here. You have addressed the berms and the vegetation in the berms that the city engineer will approve of that before it can be done, and then the removal of the berms after the land is complete. So really, I don't see any problem, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Slamia, I don't have any questions at this time. They're looking to do the work almost immediately with this loss of soils and so forth?
Correct. Originally, I think they wanted to be working now. Negotiations with the previous property owner held that up. They wanted their approvals now in place so that when things warm up, they're ready to go. Brian, do you have a better time frame on?
Yeah, well, I without disclosing, they've talked about certain contractors they might be working with, and it sounds like dirt is available immediately. So I would suspect that even before, depending again on frost and how much frost is there, they may start excavating immediately upon approval. But I would say if it's not immediate, as soon as things thaw out, it will happen. Yep.
Okay, and then regarding, you've got a number of conditions in here, primarily, I think, catching up with where the access points are and your NPDES permit. Does staff have any additional reservations beyond the conditions listed in the application?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the applicant has been a great partner with the city. Right now, things are moving very quickly, very well, both from, I think, the property owner standpoint and the city. We're much farther along this path than we thought we'd be a year ago. I know there are discussions with developers looking at these sites, which I think is promising for the property owner. I don't know that anything's been signed, sealed, or delivered, but I know Asheville does have interested parties looking at these sites, so that's very good.
And just a question along those lines, when we're doing a bit of, I think we approved some remediation, or at least 2 additional parcels in the last roughly year and a half.
Yep.
Once the sites are remediated, are they going to be available for development in the MRQ there? Or
they are. Again, as with any, I guess, with any vacant or for sale piece of property, they'd have to do their final site design and make sure they can satisfy parking, green space, and so forth. There's a possibility some of these sites might be able to move right towards building permit without coming through the planning commission or council. It all depends on kind of the details of the development. But yes, they are looking for development in the very near future.
Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing. I'd like to open the public hearing now. Anybody wishing to speak forward on this matter should come forward. Seeing nobody, the public hearing is now closed. Any additional comments from or questions from commissioners? Seeing none, I don't have any additional comments or questions other than I think this is just the whole quadrant there, and great opportunity for soil remediation and for site remediation with work on County Road 5 and maybe additional soils there. So this is a great opportunity to move this forward. So without any additional comments, can I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the interim use permit for soil remediation on Lot 8, Block 1, Burnsville Industrial Park, with the 3 conditions contained in the staff's recommendation in the background material. Does that work?
Do I hear a second?
So I beg to second that motion, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion and a second. Put it up to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 3-0, and this will go to council.
Council's meeting next week on March 4th.
All right. That brings up the, second to last item on the agenda. Any updates from staff or fellow commissioners? Staff?
Commissioners, I just wanted to bring up, we are canceling the March 10th meeting, which is your next meeting. We do have projects in the queue, but we're trying to even things out, so we're not meeting on one item one week and 4 items the next visit. So we'll cancel the 10th, but we will be likely meeting both times in April.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any updates from commissioners?
Nope.
All right. Which brings us to the final topic, adjournment. Do I hear a motion?
Chair, I moved it adjournment.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion to adjourn passes 3-0. We are adjourned.
Okay, homework.